There are just certain things with the NFL that you take for granted. The New England Patriots are going to win 10 plus games. They're going to win the AFC East comfortably, and they're going to make noise and be a factor every year in the AFC playoff race. And for the defending Super Bowl champions, even with Tom Brady being another year older, another year into his 40s, the retirement of future Hall of Fame tight end Rob Gronkowski, you're still looking at it and wondering, is anything else that happens really going to matter? Could they do it again? And, very early on in the season, when they went out and made the move to bring in Antonio Brown, you're like, oh, that's cute. Arguably the biggest need that they have, the rich get richer. But ultimately, that didn't work out. Antonio Brown played one whopping game for the Patriots before he was ultimately sent packing because he couldn't control himself because he's an idiot. But it was fun to think about maybe at the time, like the evil empire strikes one more time. They're going to try and get one more ring, and then Antonio Brown, of all people, is going to make it happen for him. This is craziness. Craziness. Then you had Josh Gordon come back, but ultimately he got released because I would think the Patriots must have known that he was about to fail another drug test. Big surprise there. Guy just can't stop being an idiot. That's all it is. Don't feel sorry for him. There's nothing to feel sorry for anymore. You do it that many times, then obviously you don't care about football, then you don't have the right to play football anymore. It's that simple. It's like when people talk about, oh, I miss my mom or I miss my dad so much, and they drank themselves to death. Well, clearly they didn't care enough about you. They loved the bottle more than they loved you. Hard to say to somebody, but that's the reality. You can make all the excuses you want. So, as a bit of an overreaction, knowing that they didn't have much outside of Julian Edelman in terms of their wide receiving core, they made a bad trade, sent a second-round pick of all things to the Atlanta Falcons for Mohamed Sanu. Ugh. Falcons came out like gangbusters on that one because Mohamed Sanu did not do much for him at all. And even in spite of all of that, here go the Patriots, halfway through the season, benefiting from a kind of soft schedule. They're 8-0. So halfway through the season, they're undefeated. But then, as you go into the second half of the year, you got the losses to Baltimore, and then Houston, and then Kansas City. You started to see some of the flaws in the New England Patriots, and you started to realize that this year might be a little bit different. And then, when you get to Week 17 and the loss to the Miami Dolphins, that loss knocked him out of a 2 seed, gave it to the Kansas City Chiefs, who certainly ended up taking advantage of that first-round bye, and take the New England Patriots from that first-round bye that could almost guarantee having every single year. For a team that probably needed it this year, they ended up having to play in that wild card game. And you really saw it in that wild card game against the Titans. The lack of offensive explosiveness on the outside just absolutely killed them. It was a problem for them all year long on offense, and in the playoffs, it ultimately caught up with them. And you're talking about a team that, granted, their schedule was not the toughest, but this was a team defensively that was really, really good. They were elite. They were tops in the league in average yards allowed per game. They were tops in the league in average points allowed per game. You had Stephen Gilmore, Defensive Player of the Year. You look at them, and you say you got a lot of the formula for success there, and you certainly did. But again, it was a lack of offensive explosiveness that really cost them at key times in the season, and certainly against the Titans. Tom Brady, I know he threw for over 4,000 yards, but he clearly wasn't the same. Some of it was on the talent and help around him or the lack thereof, and some of that, frankly, was on him. And those lack of passing game weapons in particular were really obvious at really bad times, and which is ultimately what led to that wild card round loss against the Titans. And it's fascinating now because the power structure of the AFC and the NFL has shifted a little bit. The Patriots are still in the mix. They're still certainly viable, but they don't have the same aura of invincibility around them. They don't have that same aura of it's ours and somebody's got to prove it by taking it away from us. They don't have that anymore. And when we look now ahead to this offseason, what's next for Tom Brady? We can assume, especially with the Hulu commercial, that he's going to be back. But the question is he going to be back in New England? There are certainly options, interesting and intriguing options. I don't know if there are any better options other than what he would currently have in New England. Feels a lot of what he's doing is trying to make it a game about making Robert Kraft blink because he wants Brady to play his whole career there, and as a result, leveraging that into getting a 2 or 3 year massive contract. And if he does, I have no complaints about Tom Brady doing that. All of those years he could have commanded significantly more and deserved to command significantly more for his level of play at the position that he was at, and he did not do so. I look at that and I say, you know what, now at the end of his career, when maybe he's not worth that price, the chickens come home to roost a little bit, he should get every single dollar that he can from the New England Patriots or somebody else because he has earned it and so much more. But it will be an interesting subplot as the offseason goes on. Does Tom Brady stay and play another season with Belichick in New England, or is there a big change coming down the road? Um, I guess only time will tell. When you look at their draft class, N'Keal Harry only played in 7 games and he didn't do much. Jawan Williams only played 9 games and then didn't he just get arrested for drug charges? Chase Winovich, I think to the surprise of absolutely nobody, played well in that system, 5.5 sacks. Like he just looked like the type of 3rd round pick, Bill Belichick, Trey Flowers, Chase Winovich type of guy. That's exactly what the hell he looked like. That's absolutely what it is. But when you look at that draft class, it's emblematic of a lot of draft classes you've seen in New England over the years, and where at times Bill Belichick, the general manager, has hurt and impeded Bill Belichick, the all-time great head coach. N'Keal Harry did nothing. Juwan Williams did nothing. You can't continue to miss on those marquee premium picks and not get much value out of them and expect everything's going to be okay forever and ever. Luckily for them, they have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the salary cap, which I certainly expect they're going to have to use. They've got over $40 million in cap space, and I'm sure they will prioritize re-signing maybe Devin McCourty, maybe Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins. Certainly, I would think they'll bring back Matthew Slater. But you would anticipate that they're going to spend some money in the offseason by trying to upgrade the offensive weapons that they have around Tom Brady. Because their defense is fine. Their defense they could win a championship with right now. Their defense they could win a championship with in 2020. But that offense, that's a wild card round offense at best. And it showed this year. And if they don't do things to upgrade and change there, then it certainly is going to be a problem again in 2020, even with Brady potentially coming back. In terms of their team needs in the draft, they've got the 23rd overall pick. They've got a 3rd rounder, a couple of 4ths, a couple of 6ths, and a 7th. So not quite the same amount of valuable draft pick currency we've expected to see out of the New England Patriots in recent years, but still certainly plenty to work with, especially if they want to go get a big name or two. But the number one need to me is on the long term, unless they think Jarrett Stidham is the guy, they've got to find a young quarterback somewhere. And whether that's one of the 4th round picks, whether that's the 3rd round pick, somewhere along the way, they got to find a young quarterback unless they're really, truly confident that Jarrett Stidham is going to be the guy in the future. Feels like a big leap, big reach, but you could have said that 20 years ago about Tom Brady ever taking over for Drew freaking Bledsoe. But it is certainly a need. Outside of that, the number one need is tight end. And that feels like that's reasonable to say. Like you could see the impact from not having Gronkowski there. You could see the impact from not having that weapon in the middle of that offense at the tight end position. And especially when you look at Tom Brady and his eroding skills, I think the tight end and having a dynamic playmaker at tight end is even more important at this stage of his career than it would have been maybe 5-10 years ago. They didn't get a real replacement for Gronk last year in the draft. They got to try and find one this year. Also, you look at wide receiver. I know you just spent a 1st round pick on a wide receiver, but good God almighty. Your wide receivers outside of Edelman, not really good. You need a game breaker on the outside. You need somebody that can give you some speed, some home run ability, and that is something they do not have. Julian Edelman's not that type of guy. He's a slot guy. N'Keal Harry most certainly is not that type of guy. He's more of a physical possession type of receiver. They need a home run threat, a guy that can stretch defenses with his speed, a guy that can get open deep, and they could probably use multiple guys like that out of this class, and luckily for them, the wide receiver class is pretty good. I think on defense, for the most part, they'd be drafting potentially for depth and guys that fit their system, maybe a strong safety, maybe another edge rusher. But the bottom line is this. Assuming Tom Brady comes back in 2020, and it's an assumption, but it feels like a safe assumption at this point. Let's say that he does. If Tom Brady comes back in 2020, then they need to make sure that they invest heavily in free agency in the draft and that offense. And if they do that, this team could be right back in the mix and even better in 2020, potentially staring down another Super Bowl appearance. And if they don't, you're probably looking truly at the end of Tom Brady's time in New England, and you wonder maybe the end of Bill Belichick's time there as well.